Well, good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery. It's a beautiful Thursday morning. Today is March 13th, 2025. We get together most weekday mornings at 8 o'clock Central with our distribution partners to talk about strategies, tips, techniques, share success stories, and support each of you. We're going to talk about a new stimulus grant that is available. What we're going to talk about today is what's true, but also emphasizing some key words, some key phrases that we have found that if you use that in your introduction and explanation to your prospects, they're more likely to be interested, they're more likely to get engaged, they're more likely to sign your contract. Because people like some certain terms, their ears perk up. When you talk about a new grant, people like that. When you talk about a stimulus, people like that. When you talk about legal loopholes, they like that. So these are some key wordsmithing phrases that you might want to incorporate into your explanation. Now, I don't know how tuned you are to the news, whether it be local or national, but there's a lot going on with our government. And we're not a political organization as a 501c3 nonprofit. We frankly can't be. But the bottom line is there's a factual and clear movement in the government to reduce the size of the government, whether you like it or not. We're not here to judge it, but that's a fact. They are laying off tens of thousands of government workers. That was the catalyst. It is the catalyst for this new stimulus grant. It was designed to help those government workers that are losing their jobs. However, what do we know? There's a loophole, a legal loophole, and I guess we'll add the word legal because we don't want anyone to think that we're gaming the system that allows anyone to participate. So, new stimulus grant designed for displaced workers from the government. However, there's a legal loophole. Anyone can participate. Don't know if you read about this, saw it on the news, but if not, watch CNN or Bloomberg or MSNBC. You'll hear more about what's going on with government reduction and changes and workforce. So here's what's included in that new stimulus grant. Number one, so what's the concept? The concept is to take these people that have been W-2 employees, often for years or decades, and move them into job creation, move them from being a worker to a creation of workers. So they own businesses. So what do we know? If you want a business, you probably need to have a fundable business. Otherwise, you'll probably go broke. And there are certain elements that's needed for a fundable business. We've covered that on our prior training, so we don't need to go too deep into the weeds there. But through the stimulus grant, what's included is an aged, compliant business entity. And this is really important. The word compliant shouldn't be overlooked. If you and I are going to be providing these people a business entity, it needs to be in good standing at both the state and federal levels. Otherwise, it's not going to be fundable, but these certainly are. So that's the first deliverable. We know that to get business funding of any meaningful amount, we're going to need to have a business plan. And so business plans have certain elements such as uses of funds. It has to break down to the lender what's going to be how the money is going to be used, how much for what kind of a shopping list. So the business plan is included with these shelf corps. Also financial projections, because often these are early stage businesses. So it's not like that they've been operating for 5 or 10 years. So what's important to the lender is that we're able to show them, loan us the money, and then this is how we're going to use the money, which I mentioned a moment ago, and this is going to be the results. Here's how our financials, our profitability will grow so we can afford to pay back the loan. So don't be confused. I see a couple hands going up already. So we're not talking about a grant allocation of money to these new businesses, although it does include the 100,000 collateral. We're talking about a grant that provides the shelf corp, and the shelf corp then is fundable. So the grant is providing free shelf corps to individuals. And we'll talk about the process in a moment. Good question there, Alonzo. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Type it into the Q&A and we'll address it. I want to make sure everyone's clear. All right, now there is limited funding available. And so we were talking about wordsmithing. What are some key phrases, key terms that will often get your prospects' ears? We said grant was one, stimulus is one, legal loophole is a good phrase. And then you want to create some urgency. This isn't going to be around forever. So if you're interested in this, you probably want to act on it now. So we want participants to apply before funds are exhausted. And they're going to apply through you. Those of you who are grant coordinators / resellers, you're going to be able to handle the paperwork for these people. That's your role. All right, so let's go through the participation process so we're all clear, and we'll answer any questions or concerns you have. So the first thing that we need these folks to know, and again, it was designed for those that have been laid off from the federal government because of a legal loophole. Frankly, anyone, even if they've never worked for the government, can qualify. And of course, there's no upfront, no out-of-pocket expense to get a shelf corp. So what's going to happen is the grant is going to actually reimburse them for the cost of the shelf corp. So just as we've talked about on other trainings, the prospect will come to you as a grant coordinator / reseller. You have the agreement. We should have already sent that to you. You should have it. If not, let us know. I'll give you our contact information again in a moment. You'll have them enter into the shelf corp purchase agreement. Then we're going to get them financing so they have no out-of-pocket expense. Then they're going to get the shelf corp, and then the grant is 100% reimbursement for the cost of the shelf corp that they bought from you, up to $15,000 per shelf corp. Now, each shelf corp, of course, it's fundable. So what happens, it's a two-step process, quite frankly, as we've discussed before. First, they purchase the shelf corp from you. And then once they've done that, then they'll enter into the funding agreement, and the funding agreement has no upfront cost also, but the funding agreement guarantees a minimum of 100,000. That's not a maximum. So some people get confused, like, oh, well, if the client wants 200,000, do they need to do 2 shelf corps? Well, they could, but that's not the point or the intent. It's a minimum of 100,000. Everything that we do is in writing. It's should be clear. And so it's not just lip service. There is an absolute written guarantee for a minimum of 100,000 per shelf corp. Can do more though. There should be a space there. All right. So then what we're needing from you would be, if you're interested in helping us go spread the word about this grant, this new stimulus. So, of course, to be a grant coordinator and reseller means the same, by the way. So I guess we can go ahead and just clarify that so no one gets confused. So there's no cost to be a grant coordinator or a reseller. The training is free as well. So there's no hidden cost, not even an agreement you have to sign. So no gotchas. A very flexible schedule if you want to be a grant coordinator or reseller. Some are part-time, some are very part-time, some are full-time. We have attorneys and accountants, we have tax preparers, we have truck drivers, we have a couple strippers. So all different occupations are welcome. It's not a sales position. I think that's where some people get confused. Some people will come back and say, well, I'm not really good at sales. I don't want to sell anything. Well, first of all, that's a bit ironic, because if you're an entrepreneur, you or someone better be good at selling, because someone's got to buy your product, your good, your service. But regardless, what we're talking about with grant coordinators and resellers is not a sales position. All we need to do is educate about the grant, and people will make their own decision. If you educate properly, I think you'll have about an 80 to 90% conversion rate. So you don't need to worry about being a salesperson. Being a grant coordinator or reseller is not get rich quick. It's probably not even going to be your primary income stream, but it's an honorable work, and it's set up where you make $5,000 up front for each grant participant. Our average grant coordinator reseller does this on a very part-time basis. Our average grant coordinator reseller has 1 participant a day enrolling in the grant. So, I mean, when you look at it that way, 5,000 a day, times 5 days in a week, 25,000 a week. It's a side income, right? So for Ernest, for Claude, for Ivory, for Mr. Certain, who's on here, for a lot of you, I know an extra 25,000 a week, not a real big deal, but we're doing two things. We're helping people and we're getting some extra cash in your pocket. The real money isn't from the 5,000 a day. Well, that's nice and pretty dependable. The greater amount of money that you make as a grant coordinator reseller by helping people with a new stimulus grant is the back end. The back end is you're paid 5 points of each grant participant's capital raise. That can be a lot. Now, if they're just going to do the minimum of 100,000, 5% of 100,000 is only 5,000, but it's essentially doubled your income, right? So up front today you make 5,000, and then when they get funded, let's just assume 15 to 30 days out, then you're making another 5,000. But this doesn't have a cap. So the larger the capital raise, like I was just working with Anthony Fernandez. Let's see if he's on this morning. He's a client. I don't think he's a reseller. He's not. But we're going to funding today for he goes by Tony, but we're going after a 1.5 million capital raise today. So let's say we've got Alonzo on here. So let's say Alonzo was the one that brought Tony to the table. Well, if Alonzo was making 5% of 1.5 million, that's a pretty good paycheck, right? That's 75,000 if my math is correct. And then again, as a grant coordinator reseller, you're not sitting around waiting, hoping to get paid. It's actually daily pay direct deposit. So I'm not really here trying to persuade you, oh, come do this. I'm more wanting to make sure that everyone's clear on the new grant stimulus and how you can use some certain words and phrases to get more people engaged. Because again, a lot of people, they don't have the mental bandwidth that you have. They're just looking to skim, and you got to hit certain hot buttons for them to even pay attention. But if you talk about that you're a grant coordinator, you're helping spread the word about a new stimulus grant that's available to provide a free shelf corp. The shelf corp comes everything that's needed for funding. It comes with $100,000 already. There's no out-of-pocket cost to participate. I think you're going to get some real traction. People love grants. People love free things. And so I think we covered all that. So then just in terms of our contact information and resources, just as is on the bottom of 509 Pacific, get rid of that, can't we? There we go. Just like on the bottom of 509 Pacific is our phone number. That matches there. If you're interested, well, we had a different training. This was left over. Client placement program, just I'll mention it briefly since it was on the other training. It's on here from the other training. The client placement program is for those of you that don't want to go generate your own clients. We already have clients that need serviced. And so if you're interested in us transferring existing clients, not prospects, not leads, but clients, we can do that. But that was a different training. You can go back and see any of the past trainings on YouTube. Quick cash, which isn't really our point today, but that's right here. And then most specifically, if you're not currently plugged in as a grant coordinator, this is where you do it. So 509pacific.org, and you fill this out. All right, so with that, let's get to questions, comments, concerns. I know some of you may throw questions out there that maybe you don't feel like I give you a real thorough response, but in many cases, we've probably spent a full 30 minutes on some of these topics. And in some cases, a superficial answer, I don't think does it justice. So if you're going to be active as a grant coordinator, even if it's on a part-time basis, you'll probably be best served by going back and being familiar with the on-demand trainings that are there. Now, we're continuing to progress with our new office building. And once it's constructed, we'll have a training room in the building. So we'll start having you all out here on site if you wish. We're going to have a really nice big commercial kitchen. We're adding to the payroll a full-time chef. So when you're here for training, you'll have scratch prepared meals. It's going to be awesome. Right now, the trainings are primarily on demand, But once our building is finished and the training center is open, we'll have you in, which we're looking forward to that. All right. So let's see. Ben's got an interesting question about kind of use of funds. So within the business plan, okay, so let's go back to the construct of the Shelf Corp. So with the Shelf Corp, it is set up, it's like a business in a box. It's ready to go. Can it be customized? Can it be altered? Absolutely. But the real value is it's ready to go. So with that being said, the business plan is written, the entity is set up as a management consulting industry code. But that doesn't prevent them from providing other services. Many businesses have multiple revenue streams. So some of you think, well, if it's a management consulting firm, that's not going to work. Well, that's the opposite of being true. That's the easiest to get funded, and it doesn't prevent the owner of the business from doing other things. There's nothing that prevents them from that. The business plan is written up, the financial projections are written up. That's why this is so popular, because it's a business in the box. It's ready to go. But it is set up ready to go for a $100,000 capital raise. It includes the collateral that's needed. This is in the form of accounts receivables, and then we can turn around and liquidate those receivables and turn it into cash. Let's go back to Mr. Hernandez we were talking about a minute ago. So, Mr. Hernandez, we're going after a $1.5 million capital raise. Our average client capital raise now is $1 million. Now, that means some people want more, some people want less, but on average, it's $1 million. Mr. Hernandez, we're applying today for $1.5 million. So, with that being said, we can alter the business structure to meet the client's unique perspectives. However, I think the biggest sales pitch, if you will, is that it's a business in the box and it's ready to go for 100,000 right now. So don't lose clients, don't lose participants that say, "Oh, I don't want it to be management consulting." It doesn't matter. That's just how it's filed. Oh, I need more than 100,000. That's fine. That's not an issue. But our main point today is to bring forth to you clarity that what you say and how you say matters. So you never want to say anything that's untrue. However, you do want to be astute enough to realize don't talk yourself out of a deal when you're enrolling clients. Provide them the written agreement so everyone's on the same page. Everything that we do should be in writing. Everything that we put in writing, we should do. And then also understand most specifically today's point is that key words and key phrases, whether it be in your conversations or even in your marketing, can make a difference in the response. Now, if you don't want to do any marketing, again, we can do the client placements and just send them to you. So what are some key words that we've talked about today? Let's add a little note here, and I'll ask you all to help me. What are some key words or phrases that we've used today that you might advise yourself or your peers to use to attract attention and engagement? All right, David M says grant. That's right, David. Yeah. So people love to hear about grants. What can I do? Because grant to them kind of means free, and it is. We're giving away Shelf Corporation. Through the grant, we are giving away Shelf Corporation. Now, they're going to buy it from you first, and the grant's going to reimburse them. But in the end, we are giving it away. Zahn says stimulus. That's right. So that's another key word or phrase that if you happen to include in your conversations and or marketing, that's likely to get people engaged. Okay. What else can anyone think? Guaranteed. And again, we always back it up, right? Because you don't want to just say guaranteed. What's guaranteed? So what we provide a written guarantee in the funding agreement is a minimum of 100,000. Now, if they want more than 100,000, that doesn't prevent us from helping them get more. But the 100,000 is written in stone, guaranteed. Rachel says assets to capital. I don't know what that means. Assets to capital, she says. What does that mean, Rachel? You'll have to help me a little bit with that one.